While Southeast Asia's mega rail lines and coordinated supply chains sat bogged down in years of funding standoffs and sovereignty disputes, 7 central banks quietly built a cross-border payment network that spans the region. No summit, no treaty. PromptPay, QRIS, DuitNow, and PayNow now talk to each other directly, in real time. Here is how that happened while the world was watching the grand project stall. Act 1. The vendor who never learned to use a credit card machine. On the last day of March, in the northeastern Thai town of Udon Thani, 52 shopkeepers along Thong Yai Road taped a new kind of sign to their counters. Not a menu, not a price list, a single printed QR code, laminated against the humidity, costing the vendor nothing but a sheet of paper. Within weeks, a tourist from Kuala Lumpur or Jakarta could walk up, open their own banking app from home, scan that code, and pay in seconds. No currency exchange booth, no card machine, no fee eaten by a foreign network. The shopkeeper never touched a point of sale terminal because they never needed to. This is not the ASEAN integration story that makes headlines. While projects like the Kunming-Singapore rail link have spent years stalled under sovereignty disputes and funding standoffs, a quieter kind of integration has been completing itself transaction by transaction in places like Udon Thani. 7 central banks built this without waiting for 10 nations to agree on anything at once. They did not attempt a monolithic regional monetary union. They focused on one practical problem, making one country's QR payment rail talk to another's banking app. Act 2. The web. Nobody voted on. It began formally in April 2021 when Singapore and Thailand linked PayNow and PromptPay, the world's first real-time, cross-border retail payment connection between 2 sovereign currencies. Neither country waited for the other 9 ASEAN members. They simply built a bridge between 2 systems that already worked at home, bypassing years of diplomatic gridlock in the process. That bridge held because the domestic foundations underneath it were unusually strong. They simply built a bridge between 2 systems that already worked at home. Thailand's PromptPay has passed 90 million registrations, exceeding the country's own population of roughly 70 million, and clears over 74 million transactions daily. Indonesia's QRIS connects 57 million users to 40 million merchants, 92% of them micro-enterprises, and cleared 2.6 billion transactions in the first quarter of 2025 alone. Malaysia's DuitNow saw total e-payments grow 25% to 18.4 billion transactions in 2025. That scale is what made building bilateral bridges worth it. Bank of Thailand with Bank Negara Malaysia, Bank Indonesia with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Each pairing negotiated its own agreement without needing a regional body to bless it. By December 2025, 29 of these live linkages were running across the ASEAN Plus 3 region, moving 36.2 million transactions worth $716 million. It is not one network. It is 29 separate handshakes that happen to add up to one seamless experience for anyone scanning a code at a market stall. Act 3. What a street vendor saves and who loses it. Follow the money, and the reason this worked becomes obvious. Everyone with the power to block it had no reason to. A merchant accepting an international credit card loses 1.5% to 3% of every sale to network fees. QRIS caps that at 0.3% and waives it entirely under roughly $32 for a micro enterprise on single dollar margins that is not incremental. It is the difference between profit and none. Migrant workers feel it just as directly. Correspondent banking can consume up to 6% of a remittance and take several business days. Through the link PayNow PromptPay rail, a worker in Singapore sends money to a relative's phone number in Thailand in under 60 seconds for a flat fee of about 150 baht, roughly $4.50. The recipient gets the rest in full. No card network and no correspondent bank had a seat at the table when these agreements were negotiated. There was no single treaty to lobby against. That absence of a target is precisely what let the system move this fast. Act 4. The math problem nobody wants to admit. But the bilateral model has a ceiling, and it is a mathematical one. Connecting 5 countries this way takes 10 separate agreements. Connect 20, and the number balloons past 190. What works for a few willing neighbors becomes unmanageable at scale. A tangle of custom arrangements that eventually collapses under its own weight. The fix is called Project Nexus. Instead of building custom links to every neighbor, each country connects its payment system once to a single central hub and instantly reaches everyone else already plugged in. 5 central banks, from Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines, Singapore, and India, incorporated the governing body in March 2025. Bank Indonesia joined as the 6th member this year. Live operations are targeted for 2027. If it launches on schedule, the payoff compounds. A Southeast Asian digital economy that has already crossed $1 trillion in transaction value gets structurally cheaper to move money through. Migrant workers capture billions once lost to intermediaries. Local currency settlement insulates regional banks from US dollar shocks. But speed cuts both ways. Real-time rails are a real-time gift to fraud networks. Authorized push payment scams already cost Southeast Asian consumers over $5 billion a year. The same instant settlement that helps a Bangkok street vendor also helps a money mule move stolen funds across a border before anyone can freeze it. Differing bank secrecy laws mean security teams often cannot see the pattern until it is too late. One serious cyber heist tied to the hub could be enough for a central bank to defensively pull its connection, and if a major participant walks away, the whole model risks unraveling back into scattered bilateral pairs. Act 5. What gets built without a summit? For decades, the assumed template for regional integration was the European one: grand declarations first, infrastructure second. ASEAN's most expensive, most photographed projects largely followed that script and largely stalled following it, snagged on exactly the sovereignty questions a treaty is supposed to resolve in advance. The payment rails took the opposite route. No country surrendered its currency or its monetary policy. Central banks solved one narrow problem, repeatedly bilaterally, until the sum of those small fixes looked from a distance like regional integration. Whether that quiet method can survive its own success is still an open question. Project Nexus is the first real test of whether it scales past a handful of willing partners into something that has to hold under national compliance regimes, sovereign law, and the geopolitical friction that has stalled every grander ASEAN ambition before it. The vendor in Udon Thani never had to think about any of that to tape a QR code to the counter. As this web scales to handle hundreds of billions of dollars across delicate political borders, the next test may not be so simple. Southeast Asia proved that regional integration does not require grand summits or a shared currency. It just requires fixing one concrete problem at a time until the world notices the web you built. I am Hero the Hornbill, and this is the ASEAN Angle.